everyone, and welcome back to the Make You Remarkable podcast. Today, I'm joined by Jack Hubbard. Jack is a really, really close friend of mine. Jack, it's great to be with you today. How are
Thank
you
you.
doing today?
I'm doing really well, and thank you, Neil. It's a real privilege to be on your program.
Yeah, well, it's a privilege to have you. I've had a lot of deep respect for you. Jack is he has become an icon within the banking industry across the country. He literally is the guy most people think about when they think about sales training as it relates to banks. But this material today, if you're tuning in and aren't a banker, get a pen, get a pad, because you'll pick up some great tips that transcends just beyond the banking world. Jack is the co-founder of The Modern Banker. He's an author. He's a classroom instructor. He's a thought leader. He presents on social selling for bankers. Well, that's a term we'll probably talk about some today. Bank to business conversations is one of his one of his lines that he likes to use in terms of bankers selling and also sales leadership. So he has a best-selling book. It's called Conversations with Prospects, and it's become the standard for new client acquisition strategies in banking. And you asked me this question a while back, Jack, because I've gone through the work it takes to write a book, and you have as well, and a best-selling book for that matter. Where do you find the time? You asked me that question. I'll reverse it back and ask you, where do you find the time to write a book like this? That's it's an outstanding book. So just give me some thoughts.
Well, thanks, Neil. It's so interesting. I've had the great privilege in my career to train over 80,000 bankers in sales, and I've traveled a lot over the years. And I was given a speech at the Federal Reserve in Philadelphia, and it was on prospecting. And so a couple hundred bankers there, and at the end, I was packing up, and there was this guy, and he was still sitting in the seats. And I said, Is there something I can do to help you?" He said, "No, there's something I can do to help you." He said, "What you have here is a best-selling book." And I said, "Well, I don't want to write a book. I don't have time." So, short story, he helped me write this book. He's a phenomenal writer, and we put it out, 2008. Became a bestseller almost immediately, and I still get bankers reaching out and say, "Hey, do you have the book?" And I'm actually updating it for 2024. It's a very unique methodology that's getting salespeople in the door about 80% of the time. And the main reason is because it's all about trust. I've never believed in cold calling. I think blitzes are crazy. A blitz would be get a bunch of salespeople and just blitz the heck out of a community and leave cookies and tchotchkes and all that kind of stuff. That's not where this is. That's not how you build relationships. And so it's been a lot of fun, Neil. The book really sold well, and I'm still getting questions about, can you do that class? I'll tell you something real interesting. While the book was about banking, I had bankers from the old Wachovia and others around the country who called me and said, "Hey, I did this process, and I had an accounting firm or a PR firm or a trucking firm reach out and say, 'I love this process. Can you teach me?' And they said, 'I can't teach you, but I know a guy who can.' So I've taught trucking companies and all the rest of it in this process. So it's not just banking. If you want to prospect, it's got to be very, very systematic and trust-based."
That's fantastic. That's really good. You hear a lot about, I'm a big college football fan, of course, and you hear coaches talk about this. I mean, I'm a big Georgia fan, so Alabama took it to us this year in the SEC championship. But Kirby Smart, Nick Saban, they're both cut from the same cloth. Kirby trained under Nick for a long, long time, coached under Nick, and they both talk about focus on the process. Focus on the process. Make it about the process. Don't get too caught up in the score. It's important. The score is important, but the score will take care of itself if you constantly make the process better. So give us, and that's what you've written here, and that's what you teach. is a process. And so I know that it's more detailed than this, but if you can take just, 30 seconds to a minute or so, give us an overview. Sort of give us an overview of this process and what makes it unique.
Well, it all starts with what I call being a bankerpreneur or an entrepreneur for your non-banker friends that are seeing the podcast. The first thing is you have to source your own business. You have to know the kinds of perfect prospects that you can help the best. And then you have to go out and source. I'm not big on buying lists, etc. I am big on using LinkedIn to create lists, and we'll certainly talk about that as we go forward. But you find businesses that you want to do businesses with good operating companies. And then the process is very simple. Every Monday, 5 letters go out. They're very unique letters. There's no products, not even a business card is in there. It's a handwritten envelope with a stamp. We found in our research that when you did that, people would likely open the envelope, which is exactly what you want. The letter is very unique. It has some boldface and some bullet points, and there's a PS, and it basically says, expect a call from me, and also expect an article a little bit later on in the week. So I'm trying to set them up to say, I'm very different than every other salesperson. On Wednesday of that same week, and by the way, 5 letters, Wednesday on that same week, we try to connect with 5 people on LinkedIn, same 5 people. Then on Thursday or Friday, we either send a note, print out maybe a white paper or something like that and put it in an envelope and write a little Post-it note on it, or send an email or drop it off at the business. So the first week, you've basically touched the business 3 times in 3 different kinds of ways, none of which have to do with your products. On week number 2, we actually pick up the phone and we try to make appointments. And instead of saying, I'd like to come out and get to know your business a little bit, or it's always good to get to know another salesperson, that's all just a bunch of garbage. People don't have time for that. What we want to do in that phone call is to make it 30 seconds to 2 minutes and make it so intriguing that the business owner says, yeah, I got to talk to you. We work with 3 plastics companies, and on average, the last 3 years, we've improved their cash flow by 17%. Now, if you're interested, I don't know if I could do that for you, but I'd like to come and show you some tools that we may be able to help you with. We do that Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday the following week, make those appointments, and on Friday, we call it Final Touch Friday. And if anybody hasn't said to you, yeah, I'll give you an appointment, we try to do that with one more little voicemail that gives the same kind of indication that you can help them. It's getting bankers in the door about 80% of the time, and it really does work. I'm very big on the law of small numbers, Neil. If you really think about it, about 80%, 60 to 80% of your business in 2024 will come from current clients. Now, the rest of it, some will come from referrals, and the rest of it is that process, that ongoing discipline and the process. You mentioned Georgia. The reason that Georgia does so well in football is because they have a discipline, they have a rigor, they practice well, they practice like they play. And too often what happens is prospecting is an afterthought, and well, I don't have much in the pipeline, let me pick up the phone and call 3 or 4 people that really don't care to hear from me.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the skeptic here that may be listening. And maybe they have in their mind, a process, and maybe the process, maybe it works, for them a good bit of the time. What's something compelling that may cause them to say, well, let me at least explore, what the modern banker is all about and what Jack may have to say on the topic?
Well, I think the real difference for any skeptic is, how do I integrate LinkedIn into this process? Before, when we first started, there was no LinkedIn. And so when the whole process started, we actually started with a class back in 2001 in New York City. And so there was no LinkedIn back then. So for a skeptic, one of the things you need to think about is, I'm never going to get a hit from the dugout. I got to be in the batter's box. And if your process is working for you, absolutely terrific. But what I find is that most business owners, bankers, business owners, are very haphazard about prospecting. And they may say they have a process, but they really don't have a discipline or a rigor to that. But I find that any skeptic will also say, okay, if I can add LinkedIn into the mix, if I can make more connections, if I could get more followers, if I can put more content out there that's valuable, I'll have a visibility in the marketplace that's a little bit different. And therefore, when I do prospect and I pick up the phone, I may have a little bit better edge on the competition.
What do you get typically as pushback when you're teaching salespeople and when you're maybe teaching your classes? And I'm thinking of those who attend that maybe aren't looking to get better. Maybe they're in the class because their boss sent them, say, you need to learn how to sell better, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And they are the skeptics. And you teach your program. What are they normally, initially at least, what's the pushback you hear? Is it time? Is it like, gosh, I don't have the time to put into, LinkedIn. I don't have the time to put into writing these letters and sending these letters out. I don't have the time to make these, quick 30-second phone calls, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, is that one of the pushbacks? I'd love to kind of hear from you from that perspective.
Yeah, time is an excuse, and I do hear it all the time. Yeah, I don't have time to do this. But if you really think about your week, there was a great book written last year that I read called Atomic Habits. And Atomic Habits really talks about how to find time to be able to do things that are really important to you. I'll tell you the biggest pushback that I get. I'll have bankers or salespeople in a classroom, and they'll be pretty open to what I'm talking about. But the but is when I go back to the office, nothing's going to change because my manager's going to be all over me of how many sales did you make, how many calls did you make, and it's not about a number. I have to hit my goals. How is this going to help me hit my goals? What really happens is when people actually start to use the prospecting tools and what I call discovery and what I call being a resource manager, when they start using these tools, it slowly starts to work. You and I have a good friend, Bobby Martin, who started a company called First Research, and now he's at Vertical IQ. And he wrote a great book called The Hockey Stick Effect. And that's what you're trying to do. What I see a lot of salespeople do is they get on a roller coaster. They get a bunch of sales in the pipeline, they start to close a few, and now they're down at the bottom because they got nothing left, and they have to keep doing that. You're constantly on a roller coaster. Bobby Martin would tell you that good small businesses are looking at this as a hockey stick, to start at the bottom and then continue on a trend line up. And the only reason you're going to be doing that is to have a discipline. Here's the other challenge. Your book is a roadmap for leaders. One of the challenges that I see in sales leadership is that the focus is all about numbers. How many did you do? How many calls did you make? How many phone calls did you make? Your approach, the love approach, talks about behaviors. And so if we are going to change this picture in sales, because everything you read says that AI and ChatGPT is going to reduce the number of salespeople significantly. If we want our salespeople to be more effective and efficient, we have to have sales leaders who understand what behaviors they're looking for and how to coach them more effectively. So I would say time is number one, disbelief, lack of tools, lack of leadership.
So let me ask you this question. Is it your opinion that, let me back up. I think we all know that it's not possible for everyone to make it to the NBA or the NFL or Major League Baseball. I would love to play on the PGA Tour. I would be awesome. But, I will never make it. It's not because I don't believe in myself. It's just because I don't have the talent. I don't have the God-gifted talent that so many of those guys possess. And even then, you got to work, to be at the top of your game. So sales, anyone in any organization, are there those who just have natural giftedness that can just do this easier than other people? And are there some on the opposite end that just should, maybe pursue a different career because just they don't have the ability? Or do you believe this is something that can be learned if they have the desire and the fire in the belly and the want to become better.
Yeah, it's the old Pygmalion effect. Do I have the natural ability, and regardless of anything, I can go do sales and be really successful? Or am I in an environment that, given the tools, will help me be successful? You look at Oconee State Bank and what you have done with your team. If I'm a banker at your organization, I come to the office every day very, very energized. The other thing that you've done for me is you've given me training, you've given me tools, you have great leadership, and you're going to have my back. So part of it is a natural ability to have conversations with other people. But here's what we fail to realize, I think. In a recent study, 88% of Americans said they were shy. So there are very few people who are so outgoing that are willing to just walk down the street and say hello to everybody, or be on an airplane and just talk to the person for 2 hours. I think it's a blend. If you look at the 4 different communication styles, whether you are a promoter, someone who is very big on yourself and you're fine with me, a facilitator, which is a team-oriented kind of approach, an analytical, which is a lot of details and Mr. Spock, or a controller, a very bottom line person. You can be very successful at sales as long as you have a key, and that is flexibility. If you can teach me how to have flexibility with the person that's across the desk from me, I can keep my style, but I can move toward their style, and I can be very flexible and have a lot of success. So I think anybody can be taught to have sales. I think the biggest problem, and you mentioned it, is that if I have 10 salespeople on my team, there's 3 that aren't going to make it. And the problem with a lot of companies is they keep saying, maybe next year, maybe next year. Maybe the best thing for those 3 people is to go into some other kind of orientation, either at the company or someplace else, where they can have success. This is where Disney has been so good, because Disney says, look, we didn't make a bad hire, we just put them in the wrong spot. Maybe they need to go into a different spot. You know, Neil, there's 1.3 million salespeople in America. Everybody wasn't cut out to be in sales directly. But you can teach them to the extent that they want to learn.
Let's talk about that just a minute. So let's, in the banking business, for example, we think about sales, we think about commercial bankers or relationship managers. I mean, different banks have different names for these individuals, but they're responsible for going out to the companies, medium size, large, whatever it may be, whatever size bank it is. They're responsible for getting the full relationship, the deposits, the cash management, the treasury, the fee income, the loans, everything that comes with that. But you also have those individuals who are personal bankers who may be young in their career. And I know here at our bank, what we've been putting a lot of focus on is saying that everyone in the organization is a salesperson. I mean, even truly backroom people have some level of responsibility in sales, but let's just take the frontline staff. How do these principles differ from maybe a personal banker who's been doing this for maybe a year's time, who basically they can't get out and go necessarily. They're doing, they're talking to people who come into their space, versus the commercial banker who has an expectation of getting out. Is there a difference in approach from one of those extremes to the other?
I think there has to be, because what you're talking about is short cycle buying in the branch and long cycle buying in bank to business or business to business. Take the branch first. I've always said that a personal banker needs to think about CBHC. When the customer's bottom hits the chair, that's when the conversation starts. And I think too often what happens is the customer is there for a particular reason. And what we've found in some research is that about 80% of it is for service, not sales. So the problem with a lot of banks is they want their personal bankers to push a product immediately. They want to cross-sell. I like to call it cross-solve, but a lot of people call it cross-sell. And so what the personal banker's trying to do, based on what the bank wants them to do, is going to be to push a product. But they're not. The customer's not there for a product. They're there for some help. But let's say the customer wants to come in and open a new account. It's short cycle buying. Customer has a need, and I want to fulfill the need. Remember this phrase: the buyer has the answers, the seller has the questions. If you can provide your personal bankers with great questions, not about a product necessarily, but global questions and leading to more specific, you'll be in great shape. I find it fascinating, and I'm, as you know, I'm on the board of directors of a community bank. One of the things I've taught our personal bankers to say is, what brought you to the bank today? How did you hear about us, and how much time do you have? That how much time do you have question is really important. If I'm on my lunchtime and I have 20 minutes, I have one kind of conversation. If I have an hour and I'm a retired person and I want to talk, I have another kind of conversation if I'm a personal banker. On the outside sales, the one difference is personal banker can't prepare for the customer to come in. They just come off the street. Preparation on a bank to business situation is the real difference. And I see a lot of people doing what's called doorknob planning. They reach the door of the business, they turn the knob, and they wonder what they're going to talk about when they walk in with the business owner. And that's a shame. Because I always say, if I was going to call on me and I wasn't prepared to call on me, how would I feel about me? So if I can get to the other side of the desk and I can do some planning based on what I want to ask that buyer, that potential buyer, that's going to really help me. So the difference is short cycle, long cycle.
Gotcha. Now, let me ask you this question. So, service. Let's take the service aspect for a moment, because, what we don't want, is our bankers feeling pressure, like you say, to push a product, right? But let's say you're coming into one of our offices, and you're sitting down with us, and you're talking to a personal banker, but you're looking for customer service. There's something that you need, a copy of, a check, or, help with your online banking, whatever it might be. Is there an opportunity there to ask questions that could possibly lead to a sale?
No doubt. And I think it depends on the customer's demeanor, how they're feeling. If this is a real issue with the bank and you need to solve it, and you're not going to say anything about a product at that particular point, but you might say, did we solve your problem, Mrs. Johnson? And the lady says, well, yeah, that was great. Thank you so much. I really want to stay in touch with you, because at our organization, relationships are really important, and I think we dropped the ball a little bit here. Do you mind if I call you from time to time to see if there's something else we could do for you? Well, now you've set the table, and they say yes or no, or they might say, well, give me an email or shoot me an email. From that perspective, absolutely. If it's I want to change my checks, or I want to change the name on my checking account, we just got married. There are so many cues and clues that the banker can use, and they might say, when they're finished with all of this, they might say, now, by the way, congratulations on your first home, congratulations on your marriage, congratulations on your birth of your first child. Do you mind if I ask a few questions based on what I see some of my customers are doing based on your same situation? And so I'm really big, Neil, on C's, significant emotional events. And I think that's what we need to be teaching our bankers inside the organization. What are those significant emotional events that cause a service issue to happen? And then I can use that service issue as a jumping off point to either ask them some additional questions now or later. Now, here's what the bankers always tell me. I don't want to intrude. I may see them at church. What I always tell bank presidents to do is to go into the vault and find their bank charter and read the charter to their bankers, especially the things where they're supposed to take care of their customers, however that's written. And you say, we have a fiduciary responsibility to those people. Their financial future is in our hands. If we don't help them, somebody else is gone. Wouldn't it be better for us to help them because we know we can do a better job than anybody else? When you start to frame it like that versus some of the big organizations that just push product, you got to push product, we got to sell 10 credit cards today, that's a horrible situation to go to the office in. You've created an environment that can do exactly what I suggested.
Well, you're solving, right? You're solving an issue that someone is facing that they may not even know exists, or they may know it exists, but it's subliminal and they haven't thought through it, or you give them something to think about that they haven't thought about. And like you said earlier, it's different. It's a different approach so that when they walk out, they'll say, no one else has asked me that question. And I think then, right, we've got to deliver well. We've got to be well prepared to deliver the solution to them once the problem is identified. So that's one of the things that we're continuing to focus on here with our team is that everyone is in sales. But like you said, we don't want them to feel like we've got the paddle out trying to beat them over the head, with a stick saying, sell, 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 sell. That's not what it's all about. It's about really solve, 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 and listen for cues to do that. And, honestly, that's fun. That's the fun part, having to, push a product is not. That's drudgery. I mean, that'll make all of us kind of, clam up a little bit if we know we have to push a product. But if we're in problem-solving mode, right? And you teach that so well. I mean, I've been to some of your classes, and you teach how to do that so well. And again, it's a practice that we need to get better at, and probably need to have you back in to our bank to teach us more about how to do that. Let me ask you this question, changing topics a bit, going more to that longer sales cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest with you, I'm mixed personally on this myself, okay? But CRM, that is a really dirty three-letter word to so many commercial bankers in particular. And to be, very candid, we have actually hired commercial bankers largely because they couldn't stand having to enter things into a CRM where they were before. It was such an intense process and it turned for many of them into a checking the box exercise where they went out to visit Jack Hubbard and okay, now I got to go back, now I got to put this in so that somebody can track it, and things of that nature. I can remember back at South Trust Bank, goes back years ago when I was early in my career, and just after being with CNS National Bank. And I had a program called ACT, A-C-T, that was basically a management database and sort of a CRM, I guess, before its time. It wasn't as robust as what you see today. But I had to have notes. I had to find a place to put notes and reminders and things about the call that we had and maybe the kids' birthdays and what we talked about before, because I don't have a steel trap for a mind. I will forget, and many bankers, they can remember a lot better, and they don't really necessarily feel that they need that CRM. How do you implement a CRM without everybody in the room and every banker shutting down and saying, oh, please don't, and risk, possibly losing some of your top producers because you're kind of hemming them in a box, who may be, your top level producers already. They may be producing more than we expect without using a CRM. They obviously have an effective process, but I'm just curious your thoughts around, I just said a lot, but I'm just curious of your thoughts around all of that.
Well, I can be very objective about this because we don't sell CRM and we don't have any referral partners that are CRM providers. Here's a fact. 80% of CRM initiatives fail. That's a fact. So what happens is we buy a CRM, whether we're a bank or not a bank, and what we really have is a high-priced Pac-Man game. Now, why do they fail? Well, there's a number of reasons. Let's start at the front end. At the front end, there's always a task force. And typically, those task forces have risk people on it, operations people on it, compliance people, et cetera, but they don't have salespeople on it. And so not including the salespeople really creates a huge deficit going in, because the salespeople say, well, this was pushed down our throat by somebody else, and all they want is a bunch of tick marks. If we can get some high-powered, really good salespeople on that committee, that helps. Neil, you're not going to like to hear about this because you're busy doing a lot of things. I think the president needs to be on that task force as well, because when you have senior leadership on there, it says this is a really important thing for the culture, and we can kind of talk about how this all works. I was talking to a banker recently who they've spent $4 million on a very well-known CRM system, and people are leaving in droves because of the tick mark thing. So here's the third thing. So now I've picked the thing, I have a task force, and now we've implemented it with salespeople's blessings. Now, the regional managers, the district managers, the president, everybody in the executive team has got to know that CRM system better than anybody else, and use it as well as anybody else. Because when I see that the leader is using the CRM, I'm going to use it too. Pipeline reports all have to come out of the CRM. There has to be one version of the truth. I got a banker up in the Northeast, his name is Steve. When he does his one-on-ones, his check-ins, he'll come in, ask the banker to put their password in for their CRM, and then they switch places. And Steve manipulates the CRM at that point. The banker sees that Steve can do it. He's an EVP at the bank. What am I going to do? If Steve's going to come in and look at my stuff, I had better put that in. Now, the question is what to put in, which is another problem. Nobody tells me as a banker, what do you want in that call report? So I might write volumes and say nothing, or I might write 2 lines and not catch the essence of the call. The real key is what happened on the call, what's my next step, how can I help the banker, and what are some strategies going forward? You mentioned birthdays. One of the things I really love about CRM is that they can put together what's called share of heart. I'll tell you a story. I was working with a very large bank, and I said to them, before we implemented our share of heart process, I said to them, okay, I want you to take your top client, the client that if you lost that client, you would feel terrible about. Your year would be over. I want you to write down as much as you can using this template. And it was hobbies, interests, passions, children, grandchildren, dogs, cats, awards they've won, things like that, and their trusted advisors. And so most of the bankers did a decent job on number 1. I said, okay, I want you to think about your 5th best. And now it got real skinny. But the 5th best relationship is still really important. What we need to think about is you have kids. Caleb, what a wonderful kid. You've done really well at raising a child. You love Georgia. You love golf. You can just pick stuff up but just by listening to people. I go back, and by the way, I use a CRM. I'm 73 years old. I use a CRM. I go back and I'll write things down about Neil Stevens so that when I talk to you, I'm going to say, how's Caleb? Hey, you played golf lately? What's Georgia looking like going forward for next year? Those are things that kind of help build that trust and build that long-term partnership. So again, you had a long question. I have a long answer. The CRM and the technology is just like ChatGPT, LinkedIn, any other tool. If it's not used, it's wasted. And leadership makes the difference.
And I guess you have to figure out what that CRM is, what it looks like, how detailed. And it's like people ask me about working out sometimes, what should I do? What shouldn't I do? I say, whatever works, for you the best, but you got to have something. You got to have a process. You got to be able to remember these things in order to be effective. And I fully agree with that.
And you also have to let people know that this is cultural, and you have to be ready. And this is a really hard thing, to have a top salesperson fall off the rope because they didn't use the CRM in the behavioral way that you want. Other people need to see that so that they know this is the real deal.
Let me get into one more sales-oriented question, and then we'll kind of start landing the plane here in a second. But pricing. I know we hear a lot about that, even as it relates to deposits. We will hear, bankers, not just in our bank, I mean, across the board, many times they say, gosh, I've got to have some sizzle. I've got to have something to sell. I've got to have something to get someone's attention because my competitors are doing this. And if our rates are here and our competitors' rates are here, how do I expect to move the business? All of us to some degree, we're very, we're price sensitive. The money and inflation, everything else is out there, and we have to be, as a business owner, they have a responsibility, right? A fiduciary responsibility to be wise with their money, their financing, their deposit rates, etc. What would you say to the banker that says, this is 100%, price driven, 100%? It's really, relationship is not what it once was in this business. What's your response to that?
Yeah, I would say two things. I would say, number one, there are two kinds of buyers, and you need to identify what that kind of buyer is at the very beginning or soon as you start having discovery. There are price-based buyers, and there's relationship-based buyer. You're a relationship-based buyer, Neil. You don't want to be gouged, but you're willing to pay a little more to get some quality. And I think a lot of people are. Some people aren't. Some people are very transactional, and we just need to know that going in. We need to know that if we sell a CD to somebody at 5% today, and somebody has a 5.5% CD a year from now, they're going to move their money. But what can I do in the middle of that? What can I do to see if I can keep that money? The problem many times is we take the money and then we don't talk to anybody. So I would say the second thing is, in the absence of value, price is always the issue. If you can't provide value during the relationship enough so that you can ask a little bit more because you've done so much more, you've introduced the buyer to other potential referral sources, you've put buyers and sellers together, you've invited them to events that's helped their business grow. If they don't see that, then they should go. But more times than not, they will. And more times than not, the banker isn't willing to put that effort in. I'll tell you a real quick story. So about 12 years ago, my wife wanted to completely redo our kitchen. So we hired a kitchen consultant. And I was traveling. I came home one day, and they were all in the kitchen, and the kitchen consultant pulled me over and said, Mr. Hubbard, I got to tell you, this kitchen is going to get kind of expensive, but there's a few ways we can cut. And I said, stop. I said, see that woman over there? Your job is to make her happy, and I don't care what it costs. There are people who are like that. There are people who are willing to go to a discount store, and there are people who are willing to go to Nordstrom's and get about the same thing. In the absence of value, Neil, price is always the issue.
That's very good. I lied to you. I keep thinking of things, Jack. I think we could talk all day. I'm going to try to make these quick so we can kind of get through this here. But two more quick things. One, the backroom administrative person. Let's say someone in deposit ops, someone in loan ops, maybe someone in IT. How do they get involved in the sales process?
It's a great question. I find it challenging that bankers don't take backroom people out on calls with them. They don't have to be the best salesperson, but the buyer needs to understand that we have a team here, and our team can really help. So here's the other thing. By getting people out on calls, by having them sit in the branch a little bit and observe and maybe talk to a couple of customers, you may find a diamond in the rough. You may find somebody in loan ops that actually would be a fabulous salesperson. So here's the other thing. We need to also say the importance of these support staff. My daughter, when she got into hotel work, would see people treat the bus people and the dishwashers just terribly. And she always made me promise that when I did a speech, I would always highlight the support people. We can do a lot to highlight the support people as part of our team, even if they aren't salespeople, they are a part of the team.
That's very good. And the last question that's related to that, let's talk about our marketing team. And a lot of times marketing, part of it is just branding, right? You put up a billboard, or you run an ad in a magazine, or you do some digital, branding on social media, whatever it is, and you really can't track an ROI on that. But there are things that marketing does to drive business. In your opinion, what have the better banks who have figured that part out really well, what have they done with their marketing teams to help their salespeople drive business?
Well, the first thing is they've taught their marketing people how the bank makes money. Too often what happens is we hire kids out of college, or we hire people from other banks that have had marketing experience, or from outside the industry. They have no idea how the bank makes money. So how can I, as a marketing professional, help the bank if I don't understand how the bank makes money? The second thing is, many times marketing people aren't included in the strategic plan, the objectives, et cetera. So if I'm a marketing person, I'm operating out of context. I've taught 37 years in different marketing schools. And here's the other thing that I find fascinating, and I always explain to bank presidents: get your marketing people out on sales calls to see what's going on out in the real world. Make sure they go to sales training. Help them understand how the bank makes money. The only way they can put together our materials that create ROI is to have a context and have a knowledge about that. The one other thing I would mention: too often what happens is community banks like Oconee State Bank, you don't have a huge marketing staff. You may have one or two folks. They may be focused on retail. We need to help them understand that long cycle sale. And that's why going out on sales calls and going to sales training, going to pipeline meetings are very, very important if the marketing person is going to be a great partner in the bank or in your business.
That's great. Good advice. So let's kind of wrap things up. So this is the show that we call podcast, Make Your Remarkable. So what does Make Your Remarkable mean to you, Jack?
Neil, in March of 2022, I was diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer. They gave me 30% chance to live. I was 2 weeks ago finished my last treatment, and the cancer is undetectable. So for me, your remarkable, my remarkable, is the ability to live and continue to do what I do for bankers as long as I possibly can. Enjoy my family, enjoy my wife of 51 years, and get on the golf course from time to time.
Amen.
Remarkable
Amen.
for
That's
me
awesome.
is breathing.
Amen. Awesome. That's awesome. Our mission here at the bank is to create remarkable experiences that significantly mark the lives of others. How, in your mind, what is a remarkable experience? What would a remarkable experience be with a banking organization?
Yeah. A remarkable experience for me is if I'm a brand new client to the bank and I'm a commercial client, business client, there is going to be a touch point in 1 week, 3 months, 6 months, and 1 year. We call it 1631. All kinds of value-added touches by different kinds of people, and making sure that every single touch has three components to it. Number one, great customer service. Number two, great partnerships. And number three, great value.
Awesome. All right, lightning round. Just a few lighthearted questions here. What is the most recent show you have binge watched or have streamed?
That's an interesting question. We moved here, we sold our house and moved to a rental because we're building a new house in the spring. And I have Hulu, so I don't have cable anymore. And I'm watching reruns of Cheers. I find the world to be challenging like everybody else, but I love Cheers. It's just a
That's
wonderful show.
that's awesome. That's awesome. So, outside of conversations with prospects and of course leading life on life, what's your favorite book or other resources?
Yeah, my favorite book that I've read, and I read probably 30 or 40 books a year, is The Unsold Mindset. It has to do with, and you should have these guys on your show, Colin and Garrett Brown, Colin Coggins and Garrett Brown, the authors. They talk about how to sell without being salesy. And that's exactly what we should be doing in banking. I love that book a lot. The other one I just finished reading is a wonderful book. It's called The Negativity Fast by Anthony Iannarino. Fabulous author and a great book.
Great. Two more quick questions. One, what is the most impactful piece of advice you've ever been given?
My father told me once, you can have anything in life that you want. You just can't have everything in life that you want. Prioritize what you want in life.
Very good. Very good. You mentioned before we started the show here about something that you and your daughter do, daddy-daughter Christmas. So talk about that for a minute.
You know, it's so cool. When my daughter was a teenager, she thought I was really stupid and didn't like me very much. And I guess that's probably true of a lot of parent-teenager relationships. But she went to the University of Wisconsin, and I got a call one day, and she said, you know, Dad, we need to kind of change this picture. We're going to be around together for a long time. How about we go shopping for Mom before Christmas? And this year, it was our 20th year. We don't buy things that much anymore. We don't need anything. But I picked her up in the morning. We had coffee. We went to lunch downtown Chicago. We had dinner. We bought a few kinds of things. And as she said, this is the best day of us for the year. Merry Christmas to you. It's a wonderful thing to do.
That's great. That is so cool. And those are the things that will last. That will be in her heart forever, and it's something you can definitely pass down. So our listeners, if you have not heard of Jack Hubbard, go get a copy of his book, Conversations with Prospects. I would encourage you to reach out to him. I would encourage you to look at hiring him to come into your company and help you if you're struggling with your sales process. Jack, how do we get in touch with you? Social medias, websites, how do the listeners contact you?
I think two things, Neil. I'm on LinkedIn 2 to 3 hours a day. I just love the platform. They can connect with me, Jack Hubbard. I'm also available via email, jack@themodernbanker.com.
Okay, awesome. Folks, and to get your book, they could go to Amazon.
They can.
That's awesome. Jack, you're a personal friend. You have been for over 25 years. You've made a mark on my life in a major way, as well as so many other bankers across the country. Thank you for being on the show today. I look forward to seeing you in our bank real soon.
Thanks, Neil. It's been a privilege.